All right, Lions this offseason is going to be filled with major roster decisions. Draft, obviously, and free agency. So there are a ton of free agents out there. John, I'll ask you. Give me the three that you think they should go after.
Well, I'm going to focus up front. There's a number. I've got like 6 or 7.
You sound like me.
Here,
ask for 1, you give 3. Right, yeah. Ask for 3, you're going to give me 7.
I tell you, I got 6 or 7. I got a list of 10, but I'll give you 3. And this is where I want to start this conversation. I expect that Brad Holmes is going to be very active in free agency. The Lions are now in a position, you could say maybe they went a little bit further than anybody thought, which is true. Maybe they went a little further than they thought, than they were planning on, but they're there now. They're a team that went to the NFC Championship game, should be playing in the Super Bowl. They're not, but they have that opportunity, and that opportunity will present itself again. The schedule is going to get tougher. You have to go out and spend money in free agency. You're not building your roster anymore. You've done that through the draft. You will continue to do that through the draft, but now's the time to go out there and get some playmakers to complement what you've been doing. One of the guys that I talked about a while ago, Robert Hunt, is a guard down in Miami. And whether or not you bring Glasgow back, Jonah Jackson, to me, isn't going to be worth the money that he will probably be able to get on the free agent market. So you let him go. Robert Hunt is my number 1. Number 2, Michael Onwenu. And he is a guy that can play both guard and tackle. So is Robert Hunt. So it gives you some flexibility, but you want to talk about going from a top 3 offensive line to the number 1 offensive line. That's going to be it. And then I would love to take a look at Danielle Hunter. Edge, obviously we know him from being in Minnesota. He was exceptional this year, and especially in the new defense that they had with Brian Flores. He was featured. There was an attacking style defense, and I think he would add so much up front for this Lions defensive line and the defense in general.
So you're looking for free agency for this team. I'm looking for, some guys who will probably be here for a little bit, and some guys maybe just a 1-year deal. A veteran guy who's a great guy in the room. To use a hockey term. I mentioned in the wide line, I love Stephon Gilmore. He probably won't cost a lot. The type of guy that they need. They need another corner. Now, he's not a long-range corner. I'm going to use that maybe for the draft. Up front, a 1-year guy, because I think he's got 1 year left and he can rotate and be a great mentor to Broderick Martin's development. And that's Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox can still play a decent amount of football. Now, he's not an every down guy anymore, but he's a guy that I think is great to have in that locker room. And as far as offensive line, he wasn't great this year, but I think he fits in with, especially if they can't re-sign Glasgow. And that's another former Wolverine. That's John Runyon of the Packers.
Yeah, he's played well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a little bit limited.
But that's what you're going to want for a backup, probably, right?
Yeah. I mean, he'd be a good backup. The only thing I would have, and so Glasgow, I like the fact that he could play both right guard and left guard. Mm-hmm. And I feel, even though John Runyon Jr. was a left tackle here, he fits, in my opinion, of where offensive linemen go and their abilities, he fits more in that right guard slot, and that's about all I would want from him. Okay. And so as a backup, I think you need a guy that's going to play both spots and can also play center. And I don't think John can play center.
That's a good point, yes.
So other names out there, Brian Burns, who was somebody that was mentioned at the trade deadline.
Right.
Who knows if he hits free agency.
Yeah. I didn't think that was possible, but you never know.
I think Kendall Fuller is an intriguing name. Again, though, can that be addressed via trade? That's always the thing that I look at some as guys that you can acquire, kind of like the Dolphins did with Jalen Ramsey last year, where you're not giving up, you'd have to give up a first rounder for some of these guys, but some you wouldn't, I think John nailed it with Robert Hunt. To me, you're upgrading your offensive line, your Jonah's going to go. Jonah's probably going to get overpaid. I think he's a decent player. Okay?
Yeah, I'm not trying to
but
diss him.
You're upgrading, and you might be paying the same thing.
Right.
I mean, if somebody overpays for Jonah, then you're in the same playing field. And what I like about Hunt is that he could potentially move to tackle if you had to. So that then, kind of makes you maybe want to re-sign Glasgow, because then he can move to center, and there's your offensive line.
Right.
It's Decker, Hunt, Ragnow, Glasgow, and Sewell, and you've got interchangeable guards.
How old's
to
Robert
me,
Hunt?
It's perfect. I think he's 27. But
Say that again.
How old's Robert Hunt?
I think he's right around 27, 28. Yeah.
How is it crazy to, from the defensive side point of view? I don't know what you'd have to pay for him. I don't know if the Jets are looking to re-sign him. Bryce Huff?
A good option. You're going to have to explore a lot. You're going to have to analyze a lot. Not all of these guys are going to end up being free agents.
Correct. It's like everybody said, go get the Jags, Josh Allen.
Right.
I don't
know that he's going to. Yeah. And you look, who's the kid down in Carolina?
Brian Burns.
Brian Burns. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that he's necessarily going to be free.
Right.
So there's a lot. I mean, you're looking in the secondary now that I've stated by 3. Is I okay to go ahead and go down the list a little bit more?
Yes.
I don't particularly want C.J. Gardner-Johnson back.
No.
But I'd take Antoine Winfield Jr.
I have a hard time believing that he's not going to stay with Tampa like the rest of
kind of
like Lavonte. They make the call.
Yeah, I get. Yeah. And so some of these guys won't be. Some of them will be.
Right.
And you've got to be ready for every possibility that could happen. Now, do they want to try and reset down there? Are they going to re-sign Baker Mayfield? What does that cost them? Are they going to try and re-sign Mike Evans? What does that cost them? Mike Evans could be a guy that at the end, you mentioned it earlier in the show, the Lions don't always have to get guys that are 26, 27, 28 that we think are going to be here for the remainder of their career. They can go, much like we saw Bill Belichick do in New England, and get guys that maybe only have 2 or 3 good years left. Maybe they only got 1 good year left. And you mentioned it with Stephen Gilmore. That could be a guy. Mike Evans could be a guy that you want that big target, coming down the middle or going across the middle or going down the edge that could also help. And I think J-Mo is there. I think he's ready to explode. But it could be another guy that you put there to continue helping his development. You could be a guy that's in your 7th year. You bring in a pro like Mike Evans, and he's going to have an influence on you, and it's going to be positive.
What about the cornerback from Cincinnati, Awuzie?
I think he would be a really good addition there. And honestly, you could look at 6 or 7 guys that are at that corner position and say, yes, that would be a major upgrade because you need a number 1 cover corner, which then makes Cam Sutton better as your number 2 guy because you also have Brian Branch, you've got Melifonwu, you've got some other guys that are going to continue to improve and be good in the secondary. But now you're looking at, okay, we need a stud. We need a stud in the secondary.
Right.
Go get one.
Yes. Do they need, and I know people are going to say, what are you talking about? We already have one. Do they need to think about another backup quarterback? Or are they just going to say Hooker's going to be the backup completely, even though we have never seen him throw a pass?
So this is where the value of having him active on the roster, being able to practice,
helps.
And it helps. They'll know more than we know.
Yes,
which they should. But that's saying that's not rocket science.
Right.
But they'll know a lot more right now, and I think we will get an indication in terms of what they do in free agency, not in the draft, but in free agency in regards to that number 2 spot. If they don't go sign anybody. And it doesn't necessarily, they didn't sign Teddy Bridgewater until a week into training camp.
Correct. And I didn't realize I was in the locker room the other day. Sudfeld's still on the roster. I forgot about it.
Yeah, his contract is expired.
I know. And David Blau is too.
And don't laugh, but what about kicker?
Oh, I'm not laughing at all.
No.
Will Lutz is a free agent. He's been a pretty solid kicker. He was in New Orleans with Campbell.
Yeah.
And Zerline is a free agent, although he's 36, but he does still have a big leg.
Greg the Leg.
And then the Houston Fairbairn, is that how you say it or whatever?
So here's where when you're talking about guys like that, One, it's going to be money. That's always going to be the number one factor. But it's also going to be, do I have a chance to go somewhere and make some big time kicks? And the Lions are going to be, they got a tough schedule, but they're going to be a team that is competing for division, for the playoffs, for, hopefully for another NFC championship. You're going to have an opportunity to make those big kicks. If you want to go out there and make a name for yourself, this is going to be a destination for somebody that wants to be a kicker.